Hey everyone, Scott here. Well, let's continue forward. We've got more retrofitting to do today. Continuing on the Sevastopol. As you can see here, I'm now digging out my side engine nacelles to accommodate new and more advanced engines. But first things first, I had to dig out everything and kind of reposition everything and just give myself the space I needed to work, because as I was digging out this ship, I kind of realized that, I had really filled up a lot of what I consider dead space with unnecessary armor blocks the first time around. And that's not a bad thing, it just meant it was a little tougher. But I think I could better utilize the space in here to incorporate some new technology, I guess, as it were. So as you can see here, I'm just kind of double checking my scalpel's got enough room, because I was digging out a fair number of parts to basically accommodate it. Basically, I gutted those nacelles, or I guess you call them nacelles, that just in order to incorporate a bunch of azimuth thrusters, as you'll see a little bit later on here. I wanted to use some of those great big capital ship ones that became available, because I thought they were cool. And with the Sevastopol's first iteration, it was really quite slow. Like, it would not accelerate quickly. I mean, the thrust to weight ratio was a little too high on the weight side for my taste. And since this ship's role is being changed to a salvage barge, pursuit might become a bit more of an issue, so I wanted to make sure it had enough oomph, I guess is the term, technical term there, to make sure that it could keep up at the very least. So as you can see here, I've now put the skeletons in for all the new thrusters, and those large azimuth ones that are, I think they're like 4 blocks by 8 blocks by 2 blocks wide, and they don't have any construction models at this time, so they just look like they're complete, but they're not. If they were complete, they'd have the glowing engine thruster in them. And yeah, you could kind of get a little bit of a perspective of what I'm doing as this flyby here. And so with the bigger nacelles, I also ended up having to upgrade the power supply, but we'll get into more of that later. As you can see, as I'm doing a quick flyby here, we're getting a bigger fleet, and we've got a bigger station. I got a few more people joining us. Another friend of mine by the name of The Dude has started playing with us. That's his Steam name, by the way. No relation to the Big Lebowski. So anyways, yeah, it's been kind of cool, and as you can see here, we've got a fair amount of material, and I'm starting to load up my scalpel with the parts to actually build these great big azimuth, big thrusters, they're called. I've only really got space to put them on the front and forward and back positions, so that shouldn't be too bad here. But now we start welding up the new things. As you can see, the big thrusters, they do the little smoke puff when they change build states, but they haven't actually got any build models yet, so here's to hoping in the future they will. Nevertheless, they're pretty badass. I like them. They're a lot of power. They actually did provide me with a great deal of momentum that I could use to maneuver the Sevastopol, because at some point I do a quick test with these when they're done, just to make sure that it's actually working. So that meant flying it in and getting her all worked up, and as you can see here, they require a great deal of components. It's almost like I have to go and reload my ship every time I do 2 or 3 of these thrusters, just because of the sheer volume of those supercharger parts that they use. As you can see here, the nacelle looks considerably bigger because I've gutted it a fair bit, and right now I'm just checking on the thrusters just to see what they do. And because they didn't immediately glow when I welded them up, I wanted to make sure they were working, so I kind of went back here quickly and turned them off and on. And that turns on the glowing effect so you can actually see them at work, as you can see now. So I was quite happy. I was like, yeah, they work, they're built, they're good, we can move forward. It's wonderful how you can advance, or you can access, complex thruster components through a door's keypad. Wonder if you can do that in some of the other science fiction shows and stuff we've seen. Hack the whole system through a door keypad. Wouldn't that be funny? So anyways, yeah, as you can see, we're continuing. You can see the boneyard down below me, and the one section is getting quite big. But we have to start cleaning that up here pretty soon, because we've been really enjoying capturing those cargo ships as opposed to some of the other things we've been doing as well. And yeah, this just ended up being this day that I was working on a great deal of welding on thrusters. And yeah, But the thing is, in our survival game right now, because we've had some very diligent players that are focused on things like resource procurement, and now with the capturing of ships, we really are swimming in material. We don't really have anything to worry about with regards to part requirements. So with that in mind, I've actually been encouraging everybody to start building stuff, and you'll see in the next little while, maybe the next episode or two, you're going to start to see our fleet getting a lot bigger, because everybody's got 2 or 3 ships that they're building, and you know, I've whipped together a couple of small ones just to take care of specific roles, but the Sevastopol is kind of the flagship for me. It's the one that I really want to get done, because even though this ship isn't a pure combat role, its utility role will support us immensely when it comes to collecting those cargo ships, because I have lots of plans for it. It will become a salvaging barge. A lot of resources are going to be put into salvaging mechanisms that this thing can use to quickly grab what's left of any ship that we take down, consume it, turn it back into its rudimentary parts, and then either rebuild, repair, or refit or rearm any of the other small ships that are going to be supporting us in these excursions to collect these ships. And yes, this thing will function for the most part autonomously from our station, but it's no permanent solution. Like, our station just houses so much more in terms of resources and production and refinement. I can't put all that functionality back into a Sevastopol without making it significantly bigger, which then makes it even more of a, you know, resource consumption in terms of fuel and things like that becomes a bit more of an issue. So that's no big deal. But so yeah, I wanted to be able to use the ship to support our premature salvaging for a great deal, but I didn't want it to basically replace the station. And Revan here is just showing me quickly his airport hangar that he's been building to kind of, you know, sort of be like a little waiting area for the Sevastopol when it comes into dock. I made mention that it looked like an airport terminal, so he kind of took that and ran with it, and it gets more interesting as we go here. So, again, more welding of thrusters. Lots of welding of thrusters. And I spent a great deal of time just welding thrusters, and truthfully, I mean, I've been working on this ship now a few weeks, and the retrofit has been a hell of a lot harder in terms, or little, well, maybe I shouldn't say, well, yeah, actually I can say harder, because I've had to re-evaluate how I've designed some things. I've had to reroute the conveyor plumbing. I've had to, you know, try to not make it too much bigger or change it too drastically, because I do kind of want it to fit in the same shape so that it doesn't look completely different from the original Sevastopol. But, you know, at the same time, to incorporate its new role, I guess, requires a great deal more thought, because building a pure refining ship isn't that much. A couple of docking ports, a couple of refineries, a couple of, you know, arc furnaces, a couple of assemblers, and, you know, you pretty much got yourself a, you know, a functioning home ship. I mean, you can take it wherever you want to go. But now I've kind of gone down the more difficult road of reimagining something that's already existing, rebuilding it into something that's a bit of a different, a pretty significant role change, and still trying to maintain the same shape and design. So now, as you can see here, with the new engines installed, I wanted to take it out for a quick test flight just to make sure it works. It's still got a huge hole for the bay in the front, and, you know, testing out the gyroscopes, making sure that there's enough of them, and if not, I'm going to add more, and I actually did end up adding more gyroscopes to it. It is going to get, you know, it is still pretty much exposed, like a lot of the engines are unarmored and things like that. And again, it's basically, there's lots of work left to do on it. It's flyable in this state, but it's not very, I'm not comfortable taking it into a combat scenario like this. I could also notice here too that we've been getting a lot of more ships, a lot more beacons are showing up, and we're starting to get into the point where we have to turn them off whenever the ship's not in use, because you know, it's getting really hard to see where I'm going. And there was actually one point, I think it was when I was actually doing this, that we couldn't turn beacons off. There was a bug introduced with one of the patches that all beacons would work regardless if they were powered or not, and even to the point where they were complete, even if they were, as long as they were complete in terms of build. And that just created a lot of beacon noise that we had to deal with, so I ended up having to turn off my huddle a great deal just to fly and see where I was going, get an idea where everything was. Now I'm basically bringing it back to our station at this point to attempt a docking. Keep in mind that I'm actually, it may look like I'm going quite quick, but I'm not, because I do speed up my footage 2 times speed each time to just make sure that you know, I just end up with so much footage that I want to try to compress it a bit just to make sure that I get as much of the information as I can into these videos. So this may look like quite an aggressive docking maneuver, but trust me, it wasn't. Nevertheless, you know, it isn't without its share of risk. I mean, impact is always a problem. I'm using that great big, you know, 3x3 square docking port assembly that I got in one of my mods. I don't remember exactly who made it right off the top of my head, but it's it'll be in my description. And there have been some notorious issues with it, having issues not linking up properly. It doesn't work quite right like a merge block, or quite as well as a merge block, I should say, like the standard one. But it does work, and we did kind of want to keep that that large docking port. I did want to make use of it because I thought it was really neat having kind of an airlock sort of system going in there, and with the specialized docking apparatus that Revan put together for the Sevastopol. You know, totally wanted to do it. As you can see here, getting it lined up is a bit of a process too, just because of the sheer size and weight of what I'm dealing with. I don't want to, you know, hit the station too quickly, and part of the reason that I want to be very careful is my forward and back thrusters, those great big ones, I've turned them off for the docking procedure, simply because I do not want to risk dangerous impact. So that's why I've got a little bit, you know, smaller thrusters, just basically doing the push-pulling for now for this docking procedure. And you're going to see here in a moment, as we're getting closer, you know, you kind of hope that the magnetic attraction will kick in and pull it in, but it just wasn't doing it with this docking port, which became a bit of an issue. Like, I mean, I spent a great deal of time, and because you can see there's Revan that's floating around trying to eyeball it for me and give me direction, just to make sure that we don't do any significant damage to anything. So with that in mind, you know, just taking her easy and slow. We end up trying to do some camera work and stuff like that as well to make this process easier. The only thing we ended up doing that fixed it was we actually put a merge block underneath the docking port, just because that actually would create that magnetic attraction that we needed to line everything up. And as soon as we did that, it locked back onto the station without a problem. So anything, you know, just keeping that in mind. It's just, I do know that the mod maker did say he was working on that problem. I don't know when or if there will be a fix for it. You know, I have faith that he's a pretty active guy in the community, that eventually it'll get fixed. It could also boil down to the fact that Space Engineers, Keen Software House, the guys that make it, haven't fully released full access to the code or anything like that for modding. So as such, you know, there might be something he doesn't have access to that he needs to in order to actually fix this particular issue. But, you know, as you can see, we added some cameras to try to see if that would help, and as it worked out, you know, it wasn't quite so much the fact that the camera, you know, we weren't off. It's just, it just wouldn't grab. So again, just difficult, painful. Tried building a few things while we were at it. You can see Revan coming in with a ship to quickly whip up another camera so that we can see what's going on. Just, yeah. It was just difficult. Like I said, we ended up having to go back to the merge block, like a stock merge block from the vanilla game to fix this. But I do really like this docking port, and I really do want to see it get more use. As it stands, it really is only viable on great big ships, but nevertheless, it's still very viable and very cool. And when it gets done, it'll actually really, I think, be interesting. So I'm going to end up messing around with this for a little bit here, but I think, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not going to make you guys sit through this anymore. So now that I've got it docked again, and yes, it was you know, a while. We're digging out the bottom half of the rear section of the ship, basically what housed that little sort of storage room that I had that just had chairs. We weren't sure what we're going to do with it, as well as some of the corridors that basically went out the back of the ship. Decided to reutilize that space for something else. So I was going to put some kind of a grinding salvage apparatus on the back here. And I thought about a few ideas I was going to work on. First things first, though, is I needed the space. So I decided I was going to pretty much gut the back of the ship in order to accommodate some sort of a grinding system or grinding material reclamation system, if you want to call it something fancy. But that meant, you know, digging out everything first. So here I am, digging out that old room, as you can see here. Really was just kind of a room with a few chairs in it. We weren't sure what we were going to do with it. Nevertheless, now that I know what I'm going to do with it, I basically need to redesign it. So here we go with that. And yeah. So I spend a great deal of time salvaging. Just like, I just could not really comprehend when I started this retrofit just how much I ended up changing. And still, you know, the ship never got significantly bigger as I was working. It did get a little bit bigger in places because I had to open up room in some places to accommodate new devices, new things, new blocks that did things. Like I started using sensors a lot and timers and a few other things that, you know, are there. Some of them are in vanilla, some were, you know, modded in, but just new stuff. And as you can see here as well, I kind of just digging away at it some more to basically what I wanted to do was correct some of the cargo space issues I was having as well. We were using, when the original Sevastopol, we were using a great deal of large stock containers, but I found out after the fact that the large stock containers aren't really volume, like in terms of volume, are not as efficient as the little ones, which kind of sucks. So what I decided to do is, since we had these Azimuth Industries parts, and one of them was a very large cargo container, which we've dubbed the silo, which, you know, significantly huge amount of cargo space as comparison to anything else, especially for the size it is. I really wanted to incorporate one of those into the Sevastopol, just because that would give me a lot more range, a lot more ability to store stuff and basically work out in the field, quote unquote, before you know, I'd have to return to base and do a pretty significant unload. The more that I can work out in the field, you know, the less trips back, the better off we generally are, the more we can get. And I mean, yes, we got a lot of material right now, that's a given, but depending on what we decide to do, because there's been some rumblings in this community to build a massive capital ship as a group effort here. Not sure where that's going to go yet, so we'll have to figure out as we go. And I think my ship was full and I dropped something, but nevertheless, that's why that big hole is there. I totally thought I cut that out, but oh well, everybody makes mistakes. Nevertheless, yeah, I think I cut the connector out and there's a bunch of stuff in it, and my scalpel was full, so I dropped a bit of material, which happens to the best of us. Anyway, moving forward, as you can see here, I've got that silo in the space there, so now I've got to clean up this area a little bit more so I can work some plumbing into it. I had an idea for some grinding arms that I wanted to use, so I needed the space to make that happen. So yeah, I pretty much gutted the whole back end of this ship, the tail, and it's just basically from the engine room back, completely redesigned to accommodate this grinding apparatus that you're going to see here soon. And yeah, this episode's just been a lot of grinding and a lot of thrusters. Unfortunately, when you're doing that, there's work you have to do in survival. It's a game about construction now. Yeah, I could probably whip this ship up in, you know, in an afternoon in creative, but the satisfaction of having it completed like this is something that you can't really replicate. In that, you know, in a sense, like when I was playing Kerbal Space Program, I never the main series that I put on the YouTube, I weren't career modes because I just wanted to build things, and that was great and all because it was, you know, good learning experience for the Interstellar mod and a few other things that I've done. And again, I do apologize for ending that series the way it did, but my save file got corrupted, and I kind of went outside and spent some time with Daystar after that because I wanted a bit of a break anyway. So, you know, took the summer off from YouTube and then come back, and I think I might do that again this year as well. As when summer rolls around, I might take a break. Anyway, as you can see here, this is the first iteration of the grinding arms that I was thinking of. I was using some of those extra large pistons from the piston pack mod, and I was putting grinders on the end of them, and I wanted to kind of experiment with a couple of different ideas and use sensors and things like that to try to get them to work. As you can see here, here's one of the military mine layers that we had captured. It's just basically a hulk of metal at this point. There's not, you know, whenever you shoot a mine layer in the tail section, it tends to blow every warhead inside it up, and you know, these things are also booby trapped too, so if you try to stop it, it can blow itself up as well, which we thought was kind of funny. Nevertheless, you might have seen this one from the last video when we were capturing it. Anyway, as you can see here, I've got I think Revan in the tugger right now. He's giving me a hand, and we're just trying to position this thing to see if this grinding arm apparatus would work. I had high hopes for it, but anyone that's, you know, kind of worked with pistons and to a certain extent rotors as well knows that they are a little bit unstable in the current build of the game. They have been, like, Keen Software House has been trying to fix that, but you know, it's probably a pretty significant problem that they're trying to deal with. Nevertheless, I'm using a mag plate to grab onto it, and then we let go, and then we basically turn on all the grinders, and the idea was to push it into the thing and then consume. And as you can see here, it ran into some issues. I worked with it for a great deal of time trying to get it to work, but nevertheless it did have some problems. As you can see, the one piston on the screen to the right here is wobbling funny, and that's back to the piston instability that I was mentioning. I'm not sure if that was coming from the piston or coming from the rotor, but it was there. Now, this was kind of the idea, was that it would come in and consume. Turns out, though, it wasn't very fast, at least in the current state it was. And there's no real way for me to sort of control what I was doing. As you can see here, I'm getting stuff exploding. You know, that isn't actual grinders, it was the parts off the ship, but, you know, if I'm blowing up, I don't expect any system I build to be perfectly efficient, but I wasn't very happy with this one. And as you can see, that wobbling in the center piston, and there's instability in it, and I was worried that it eventually would catch up to me and cause even more problems. We had some strange physics issues with this too. As you can see, that instability was really working in. Tugger down there, the ship that we used to move stuff around, was down there trying to help stabilize it a bit, but it ends up, you know, it didn't help that as much as we needed it to. And I mean, yeah, it's just physics instability. I was going to unlock it, and as soon as I did, I think we ran into another problem. Oh, engine running away. Gotta catch the engines. Anyway. And the other thing that I didn't really like about this particular setup was it wasn't fast enough. I mean, we could make a small ship, grab stuff, and grind it up faster than we could with this, and that's kind of defeated the purpose a little bit, which I didn't like. So, back to the drawing board, like, you can really see that center piston is just violently shaking. And I'm the host of this server, so if I'm seeing it shaking, you know it's not a multiplayer issue, so you can see stuff started busting away, and, you know, just trying to pull it back here quickly to see what we're doing. And come take a look at Tugger, and his nose is busted in. Again, more of that instability that we were dealing with, which wasn't really cool. I mean, I don't know. This system needed some work, so I had to spend some time figuring out what I was going to do with it. It just, I decided to try using sensors, and that was another attempt. But this grinding apparatus took me a fair while to get something working that I liked, and I'm not going to make any spoilers on what I ended up finally going with, but needless to say, it changed drastically from this. Anyway, if anyone else is thinking about this idea or wanting to try it, by all means, go ahead. My biggest concern was, you know, for the amount of you know, what I needed it to do. It just wasn't fast enough, and it was too unstable. The physics were just too unstable with collisions and things like that. I ended up breaking off pistons too that I didn't actually catch on camera, but anyway, not the end of the world. It is not the end of the world. Anyway, that's pretty much what I'm going to end this episode off with, because this grinding apparatus is basically the functionality of the Sevastopol, or its new functionality. And yeah, the next episode is probably going to be a great deal working on what I did with it as well. So we'll get there at some point, but this is Scott Cook signing off, saying, you know, we'll see you in space, and have a good week. Goodbye.